Jaime, thanks for being with us. With more First Nations asserting their treaty right to fish in the East Coast and the West Coast, do you think the Fisheries Minister should be Indigenous, and would it be a position you're interested in?
Well, I got into this to help solve problems. Whatever the Prime Minister asks of me, I would gladly, whatever role he deems most appropriate for me, I will gladly take that on. I'm not here to lobby on any positions or any for, especially to the media, about what I think I can bring to the table on this, but I do have quite a bit of experience with studying this issue for more than 20 years as a professor at a university, as someone who did their research paper in this in law school. I've been working with the chiefs for many years, and I've got some experience in terms of negotiating deals, but truthfully, whatever role I have, whether it's just to be the Member of Parliament for Sydney Victoria, I'm always happy to have that role.
Well, this says, you know very well that this is about asserting treaty rights. How can the Liberal government say they recognize treaty rights when the Department of Fisheries is hauling Mi'kmaq traps and seizing boats, arresting even a 14-year-old?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that these are issues that have been for more than 250 years since the signing of the treaties. Mm-hmm. We're looking at 20 years of litigation around the fisheries. We're looking at 2 Supreme Court of Canada cases, and for me to tell you that this is a simple thing would be to mislead you. If we want to do a deep dive into this situation, I think that it'll require much more than 5-minute interview, because I used to teach 4 classes at a university on Indigenous rights, Indigenous fishing, and what we've subsequently had happen since 1999 till today. But I also see that there's promise with us in terms of what we just did with the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, putting that into legislation. That's going to mean that, when we're looking at court cases moving forward, when we're looking at things moving forward from an Indigenous point of view, that now we have the Government of Canada recognizing that UNDRIP is the law in Canada. And within that, we'll breathe life into our treaties and inherent rights, because not only is UNDRIP about fair, just, and consensual relations between governments and Indigenous people, but it's also about how do you move forward with these rights. And we have a 2-year plan to ensure that we're not only recognizing this as legislation, but we're doing the necessary steps to revise and to adjust and to accommodate rights within every department. And I think that's part of where we need to be with fisheries, where we need to be with justice, where we need to be with health. We've got a lot of work to do into decolonizing a lot of structures that have been very much colonial structures for the past 150 years.
Do you think the commercial fishing industry should have a seat at the table when negotiating the treaty right to fish?
I think that they have a role to play. They should be heard, but the negotiation should be between nation to nation. And when I say nation, I want to be clear that I'm talking about the Mi'kmaq Nation, mm-hmm. 7 districts of Mi'kmaq Nations, not individual communities. I think that's where a lot of the challenge is that we're looking at a nation model with the Mi'kmaq Nation that spans over 7 districts, but we're doing current negotiations between individual bands. And I think that's what's got us into a lot of trouble. That's why Senator Christmas, and I said that we needed to take on an approach that expands nationhood and that takes control over the fisheries in a way such that the Mi'kmaq have taken over control over education, and they've got one of the best education systems running. We got 90% graduation rates. It's all because more than 20 years ago they took over that control of that education. And I think that as part of this moving forward, that I would like to see the Mi'kmaq take on a nationhood model where they work together. And fisheries associations have their organizations, and they've been given a chance to speak at the implementation studies that we've done on the moderate livelihood, which I personally introduced at the Fisheries Committee. And I think that they've got a voice. But when we're talking about nation-to-nation agreements, if we're going to stick with the constitutional law, we have to understand that these are between the Crown and the nations that signed those treaties.
Do you think that the Department of Fisheries and Oceans should stop hauling traps and seizing gear, making arrests, and let the Mi'kmaq fish to earn a moderate livelihood until the government and First Nations resolve the issue?
One of my key roles in this is to ensure that we keep the lines of communications open between the Mi'kmaq and the government. Now, I fully promote and fully advocate for, the assertion of Indigenous rights, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that there is, we have to also make sure that the fisheries is sustainable into the future. And that's one of the biggest things that I think we need to focus on is how do we make sure that not only are we able to implement these rights and to be able to assert these rights, but doing so in a way that's transparent, that's doing so in a way that's consistent, and that it's the community has accountability to know who's fishing on their behalf and what they're fishing on their behalf as part of this. So I would like to see a spot where there's more active involvement between Indigenous community members and the DFO. And this was part of the recommendations that we made during the implementation study. There are excellent examples all across the Atlantic, especially in Listugush, of models where guardians are working with DFO. And I'd like to see a more an approach that has more Mi'kmaq working within DFO as part of the solution, as opposed to just having DFO hauling traps and things like that. I think that the Mi'kmaq have to have a greater role in not only enforcement, but also the science and research that's going into this. And this was part of the implementation study that we did on Mi'kmaq rights. And I would really encourage you to take a look at those recommendations.
Will do. Jaime, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us.
Okay, thank you.